Next, grab both of your gussets. We're going to make some marks on the ends here. You want to make a mark 3/4 of an inch away from the end of the gusset on both sides of the gusset. Make another mark 1 inch away from the end on both sides. Okay, 3/4 of an inch away and 1 inch away on both sides. We're going to repeat that on the other end of the gusset. And then we are going to repeat that on both ends of the liner gusset piece. Make sure that you're marking on the wrong side of the liner gusset and the exterior gusset so that we can see these marks when we're sewing. For now, we're going to set the liner gusset piece aside, and we're just going to work with the exterior gusset for now. Fold it in half and find the center for both edges. And just make a little clip or make a mark of some sort so you can see where the halfway point is. And starting with the exterior back piece, it's very important that you sew the exterior back piece to the gusset before the exterior front piece. If you haven't already, find the center of the bottom of the exterior back piece and make a mark. And then with right sides together, match the center marks of the gusset and the exterior back piece and pin, clip together. Put a couple clips on either side of the center mark. And then next you want to line up the top of the gusset with the top of the back exterior piece. I also like to make sure that this edge is straight and put a clip there as well. Next, we're going to continue to clip around. And once you get to the corner, we're going to make some snips in the gusset so that that will lay flat in the corner. Just like this. Some small little snips about 1/4 of an inch apart or 1/8 of an inch apart, but make sure that they're no longer than 1/8 of an inch because our seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch right here. And then you'll be able to just kind of push that gusset out and it'll fill that curve. So pin that or clip that in place. And then do the other side. Make sure that this zipper end stays out of the way. Clip the end of the gusset to the top of the back exterior piece. And start clipping down the side. Once you get to the corner, make some snips. And then push that gusset into the corner so you can pin that or clip that. I need to make a couple more snips. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start at the top here, and we're going to start sewing together our gusset and our back exterior piece at 1/4 inch seam allowance. But what we're going to do is we are going to stop at this first hash mark that we made. We're going to back stitch. We're going to hop over the gap between the two marks. We're going to back stitch again, and then we're going to continue. So the space in between the two marks is not going to have any stitching inside of it. We're going to keep that open. We're going to do that on both sides. Never stitch in between the two marks. So we back stitched at the start and then sewed until we got to that first mark, and we're going to back stitch again a couple times. I'm going to lift my needle and push my fabric forward until my needle reaches the second mark. I'm going to put the needle down and back stitch to start a new stitch line. Once you get to the corners, you want to lift your presser foot and move the gusset behind the foot so that it flattens out for your curve. And just inch your way along the curve. Do that again if necessary. The gusset on this bag really fits nicely, and the corners can go very smoothly. All right, we got to our first mark, so we're going to put our needle down and then back stitch, lift our needle up, hop the gap, and then put it back down at our second mark, back stitch again, and finish off the stitch line. So I'll show you how I did not stitch in between. There is still a thread in between because I hopped it without breaking my thread, but I clipped it, and now you can see that there is no stitches in between those gaps on either side. So what we're going to do next is we're going to make some marks on the free edge of the gusset before we attach the front main panel. And we're going to lay our gusset flat like this and take our ruler, measure 3 1/8 inch away from center on both sides and make a mark. Three and 1/8 and 3 1/8 inch. I like to make these a little long because this is going to tell me to stop stitching at these points. It's very important that you keep the space in between these two points unsewn. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to sew the main panel to the gusset, the front main panel to the gusset, hopping these two marks and also hopping between these two marks. So clip the main panel right sides together with the gusset, measuring your halfway point, which is that seam that you made down the front of the ID window pocket, and clip it the same way that you did with the back piece. Put a couple clips at the back end here. Make sure that the zipper is out of the way, and then come up to make sure both zippers are out of the way. And then align the top of the gusset with the top of the front panel and clip. Again, once you get to the corners, you're going to want to snip, but don't snip past the mark that you made. We need that to stay one solid piece. So just clip on this edge of the gusset of the corner. So as you can see, I did make a snip on the line, but I did not go past the line. Now push your gusset into the corner and clip that in place. Do the same on the other side. And make your snips. Okay, we are now going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure to pop those gaps. Back stitch at the beginning. Reach your first mark and back stitch. Raise your needle, push forward, and then needle down at your second mark. There we go. And back stitch. free the gusset a little bit up at the top so I can push this out of the way of the needle, flatten out the curve a little bit, inch around the curve, and then repeat. All right, we are almost to our next mark. We just reached it. Let's back stitch. All right, I can show you here that I reached the blue mark and I backstitched and stopped my stitching, and I'm going to go over to my next mark over here, which is under this clip. I'm going to start here and sew all the way up to this edge, making sure to hop the gap over here. Okay. Needle down, go forward a couple so that I can back stitch without going past my mark. Inch around the curve and then flatten it out. There we go, that's much better. All right. Okay. We reached our mark, we'll back stitch, go forward, raise our needle, and then needle down, back stitch, and finish it off. Okay, so next we are going to insert the flap, but first I want to show you, of course, that this gap is still open in between these two marks. These two marks were each 3 1/8 inch away from center, which totals 6 1/4, and that's why we made sure that our flap was no more than 6 1/4 wide, because we have to insert it into this gap. So what we're going to do, down through the top of the bag, we are going to put our flap with the card slots side facing the main panel, so facing the connector tab and facing the ID window and the other card slots. So make sure that that's facing each other, and then go down to the gap. So pull the flap through the hole and line up the edges with the gusset and the main panel so that it's flush along this edge. It is going to be a tight fit. It's meant to be a tight fit. Just work it a little bit and it should fit. Okay, now we are going to start at our mark, so all the way across, securing the flap to the inside, and stop at our other mark. Make sure that you back stitch really well at the start here. And then when you end your stitch, make sure your needle goes down right where your other stitches ended before, and backstitch really well. Next, we're going to make sure that you can see this is practically seamless, where the stitches meet at the mark and keep going. So look inside, make sure that you caught everything. You caught the exterior fabric and the interior fabric. Everything here looks good. Yeah. Then we are going to clip the corners with pinking shears.